The monitor beeped steadily as another contraction hit. I gripped my husband Daniel's hand and focused on my breathing. We had been in the delivery room for 6 long hours, and our daughter was finally about to arrive. Everything was supposed to be calm. The soft lighting, the quiet music, Daniel whispering encouragement beside me. Then the door burst open. "We're here." My mother-in-law Victoria swept in like a storm with Robert close behind her, wearing the same cold expression he'd had since the day Daniel introduced me. "We couldn't miss the birth of our first grandchild," she said. The nurse quickly stepped in. "I'm sorry, only one support person is allowed." "Nonsense," Victoria snapped. "This is a family moment. We have every right to be here." Her eyes turned to me, sharp, judging as always. "After all, we need to make sure everything is legitimate." "Mom, please," Daniel said, tired and tense. "Not now. Emma's in labor." "Oh, I know exactly what Emma's doing," Victoria replied, checking her reflection on her phone. "Though the timing is a bit convenient, don't you think? Barely 9 months after the wedding." Another contraction hit, stronger this time, and I cried out. The doctor looked up. "We're close. I need everyone except the father to leave. Now." "We're staying," Robert said coldly. "This child carries our family name. We need to verify." "Verify what?" Daniel snapped, finally losing his patience. Victoria tapped her nails against her purse. "You know how these things can be, especially with Emma's background." "My background?" "Growing up in foster care. Working my way through life with nothing handed to me. To her that made me suspicious. Not good enough. Push," the doctor instructed. And suddenly nothing else mattered. I pushed with everything I had, holding on to Daniel's hand, and then we heard it. A cry. Strong. Clear. Perfect. "Congratulations," the doctor said, placing my baby on my chest. "You have a healthy girl." Tears filled my eyes as I looked down at her. Tiny fingers. Dark hair like Daniel's. She was beautiful. Daniel was crying too, gently touching her hand. "She doesn't look like a Montgomery," Victoria said loudly. The room went silent. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice quiet but sharp. Victoria stepped closer, studying my newborn like she was inspecting something she didn't trust. "I'm just saying," she replied smoothly, "the Montgomery genes are very strong. Daniel, his sister, his cousins, they all looked the same as babies," Victoria said coldly. "This child looks nothing like our family." "Mom, stop," Daniel warned. "I'm just saying what everyone is thinking," Robert added, stepping beside her. "A girl with no family shows up, gets pregnant right after the wedding. Any reasonable person would have questions." The nurse holding my daughter shifted uncomfortably. The doctor quietly slipped out of the room. Daniel's face burned with anger, but I touched his arm. I was done. 3 years of quiet insults. 3 years of being treated like I didn't belong. "You want proof," I said, my voice steady. "You want to verify this baby is yours?" Victoria smiled sweetly. "If you're offering, a simple DNA test would clear everything up. Unless you have something to hide." "Order the test," I said. "Right now." Daniel looked at me, shocked. "Emma, you don't have to." "No. They want proof. Let's give it to them." I held Victoria's gaze. "But on one condition. We test everyone." Her smile faded slightly. "What do you mean?" "The baby. Daniel. Me. And both of you." Victoria let out a fake laugh. "Why would we need testing? We know who we are." "Then you shouldn't mind," I replied calmly. "Unless you have something to hide." For a split second Robert's expression flickered, something close to fear, but it vanished just as quickly. "Fine," Victoria said with a dismissive wave. "Run your little test. And when they prove you've been lying, you'll sign the divorce papers and disappear." "And when they prove she's Daniel's child?" I asked. Robert stiffened. "Then we'll acknowledge her and apologize." Within the hour, the hospital arranged everything. Samples were taken from all of us, despite Victoria and Robert complaining the entire time. Results would come in 48 hours. 2 days later, we sat in a quiet hospital conference room. Victoria sat perfectly straight, confidence radiating off her. Robert kept checking his phone. Daniel held our sleeping daughter, his thumb gently brushing her tiny hand. Dr. Patricia Henley, the hospital administrator, entered with a sealed envelope. "I have the results," she said. These tests were verified by 3 independent labs. Just get to it, Victoria said impatiently. Dr. Henley opened the envelope. First, regarding the baby. DNA confirms with 99.97% certainty that Daniel is the biological father. Daniel exhaled. There. Now you can apologize. And Emma is confirmed as the biological mother, Dr. Henley continued. I stayed silent, watching her carefully. There's more, she added, her tone shifting. The room went still. As requested, we conducted a comparative DNA analysis on all parties. She paused. The results are unexpected. My heart stayed calm. I already knew something was about to break. Daniel Montgomery shows no biological relationship to Robert and Victoria Montgomery. Silence. The probability of parentage is 0%. The air in the room froze. Victoria's face drained of color. Robert's phone slipped from his hand and hit the table with a loud crack. That's impossible, Victoria whispered. There's a mistake. 3 independent labs, Dr. Henley said gently. The results are conclusive. Daniel stared at them, confusion turning into anger. What does this mean? I spoke quietly. It means they've been lying to you. This is ridiculous. Robert snapped, standing up. These tests are flawed. We'll sue this hospital. The door opened. An elderly woman stepped inside, flanked by 2 police officers. She looked to be in her 70s, silver hair neatly pulled back, but her eyes. Daniel's eyes. Hello, Daniel, she said softly, tears running down her face. My name is Margaret Sinclair. I'm your real grandmother. Victoria made a strangled sound. Robert sank back into his chair, pale and shaken. Margaret took a steady breath. 31 years ago, my daughter Julia gave birth to a baby boy. She was suffering from postpartum depression and was admitted to Riverside Hospital. She was vulnerable, heavily medicated. Her gaze hardened as she looked directly at Victoria. The perfect target for someone who wanted to steal a child. You can't prove that, Robert said, but his voice trembled. Oh, I can, Margaret replied. Victoria worked at that hospital. She had access to patient records. She knew my daughter had no support system. I was overseas. Julia's husband had abandoned her. She stepped closer, her voice firm now. She knew no one would come looking. One of the police officers moved forward. We've been investigating this case for 2 years, one of the officers said. Mrs. Sinclair came to us with her suspicions. The DNA test was the final piece we needed. Daniel stood frozen, our daughter trembling slightly in his arms. You're saying... His voice broke. You're saying they kidnapped me? Margaret stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. Your real name is Andrew Sinclair. My daughter, Julia, she never recovered from losing you. She spent 20 years searching for you. Her voice cracked. Before she took her own life. Her last words were about her stolen baby. I moved beside Daniel, wrapping my arm around him as the truth hit him all at once. Our daughter stirred, letting out a soft cry, unaware of the storm around her. Why? Daniel asked, turning to the people who raised him. If you couldn't have children, why not adopt? Why steal someone else's baby? Victoria's composure finally shattered. We tried, she cried. For years. IVF agencies. Everything. But we were always rejected. Too old, too risky, too complicated. Her voice grew desperate. Then I saw her. That girl alone in the hospital. And she had this perfect baby boy. I thought we could give him a better life. We had money, stability. She had a mother's love, Margaret cut in sharply. She had family who would have helped if we'd known. She had the right to raise her own child. You destroyed her, I said, my voice shaking. You destroyed an innocent woman because you thought you were entitled to her baby. And then you stood here and questioned me. The second officer stepped forward. Victoria and Robert Montgomery, you are under arrest for kidnapping, identity fraud, and falsifying legal documents. As they were read their rights, Victoria kept talking. Excuses, justifications, begging Daniel to understand. Robert said nothing. The powerful man he pretended to be was gone. They were led away in handcuffs. Daniel didn't even look at them. Margaret approached slowly, her expression gentle. I know this is overwhelming, she said. I don't expect anything from you, Daniel. I'm not even sure what to call you. Daniel, he said firmly. I've been Daniel my whole life. But I want to know about her. About Julia. My real mother. Margaret smiled through her tears and opened a worn photo album. She was kind, talented, a pianist, she said softly. You have her hands. She loved you so much in the short time she had with you. Daniel flipped through the photos quietly, seeing a life he had never known. At that moment our daughter began to cry. Margaret looked at her with quiet wonder. Hey, I nodded. Daniel gently placed our baby into her arms, into the arms of her real grandmother. What's her name? Margaret asked. Daniel and I exchanged a glance. We had been debating for weeks. Then he said without hesitation, Julia. He looked at me. Julia Margaret Montgomery. Claire. If you're okay with that. Tears filled my eyes as I nodded. It's perfect. Margaret held baby Julia close, softly humming a lullaby. Something old, something full of love. Your mother would be so proud, she whispered to Daniel. So proud of the man you've become, despite everything. The months that followed were a storm of court hearings, headlines, and healing. Victoria and Robert were eventually convicted, 15 years each for kidnapping and related crimes. Their assets were sold to pay damages to Margaret and to help fund a foundation for families searching for missing children. For Daniel, the hardest part wasn't the trial. It was figuring out who he really was. Therapy helped. So did Margaret. He never pushed him. Never demanded answers or closeness. She simply stayed, patient, steady, ready whenever he wanted to learn about his past. Over time she became the kind of grandmother our daughter deserved. Warm, kind, real. The rest of the Montgomery family disappeared, unable to face the truth. But in their place, Daniel's real family slowly came into view. Cousins Margaret had stayed in touch with, elderly relatives who remembered Julia, stories and memories that had been stolen from him for decades. On Julia's first birthday, we celebrated in the backyard of our new home. A home bought with the inheritance from Daniel's real mother. Money that had been waiting for him all those years. Margaret played the piano softly while little Julia smashed cake with both hands, laughing. And Daniel laughed too, truly laughed, for the first time since everything came to light. Later that night as we tucked Julia into bed, Daniel looked at me thoughtfully. You know the ironic part? He said. Victoria cared so much about bloodlines, about legacy, about being real. And in the end she had none of it. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. No real claim to me. No true family. Just a lie that lasted 30 years. And now? I asked gently, watching our daughter sleep. He pulled me closer. Now I have everything that's real. A wife who stood up for the truth. A daughter who will always know who she is. And a grandmother who never stopped looking for me. He smiled softly. That's more than they ever had. Sometimes I think back to that moment in the delivery room, Victoria demanding proof, trying to tear me down. But in the end her cruelty exposed everything. It didn't just prove I was telling the truth. It gave Daniel his life back. I reached down and held Julia's tiny hand as she slept peacefully. She would grow up knowing her story. Knowing her family. Knowing love that was honest and unshakable. The name Montgomery had been built on lies. But Sinclair, that name meant something different. It meant strength, truth, and a love that never stopped searching even after 30 years. That was the legacy worth passing on.